defense radars and ground defense missiles.
Through an agency known as DARPA, or Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, the development costs to counter the threat were shared between the government and America's aerospace industries. DARPA's main priority was to implement the force multiplier concept.
A force multiplier is any technology that permits one man to defeat 10 men.
Steve Smith is
on December 20th.
Incredible power.
File free in the app if you didn't file with us last year. Just file with TurboTax Do-It-Yourself by February 20th.
There's something flying in the sky above you that's top secret and officially doesn't exist. With incredible experimental engines and based off the technology proven by the SR-71, this black project flies undetected to radar and at an eye-watering hypersonic speed to perform its secret mission. But even more incredible, it's not one plane, but two. Launching at 100,000 feet in the air, this Parasite aircraft is capable of powering up to a Tom Cruise fever dream speed of Mach 15, breaking several human records and reaching near-Earth orbit. This is perhaps one of the biggest speculative aircraft ever thought to exist. This monolithic craft appeared as a rumor alongside the equally mysterious Aurora program in the mid-80s. But did it ever exist?
Something is in the sky. What is that?
The evidence is more real than you might think. Welcome to the dark side of aviation, the story of the mysterious SR-75, the Penetrator. Our story begins with another famous aircraft, the SR-71 Blackbird. Able to fly beyond Mach 3 and effectively impossible to shoot down, this top-secret jet was essential for the Cold War spy game before the rise of spy satellites, serving the US intelligence community from its inception in the 60s. But 20 years later, with the technology slowly becoming obsolete, there's no way that the US government would wind down the program without a replacement in sight. And let me tell you, the obvious answer up in orbit isn't perfect either. While spy satellites are incredibly useful, they can be slower to get into position than spy planes, and you can't change the tech on board once they're launched. A high-altitude aircraft can do all of that and more. Thus, near the mid-80s, the US government found itself with a retiring spy plane and a lack of aircraft capability to get to those hard-to-reach places. They would need a craft that could carry out both military satellite insertions and reconnaissance missions anywhere in the world in less than 3 hours. Enter the SR-75 Penetrator for the US Air Force. It was actually comprised of two separate components, a mothership and a subcraft Parasite that would perform the actual spy missions, very much alike to the previous generation Lockheed M12 mothership that launched the D-21 Mach 3 drone. Let's start with the mothership. It measured 276 feet in length and had a 120-foot wingspan with a narrow fuselage alike to the SR-71. To operate it, it would have a crew of 3, a pilot, a co-pilot, aka reconnaissance officer, who would navigate and take photos if needed and facilitate all the other mission needs, as well as a rear-facing launch control officer who would work with the subcraft. They were positioned at the extreme forward section of the aircraft in a small joint cockpit. This mothership was capable of attaining altitudes exceeding 120,000 feet and fly faster than Mach 5, or 3,300 miles per hour. And let's just talk about that speed because it would operate with an engine that the world had never seen before. Called the Pulse Wave Detonation Engine, in layman's terms, the aircraft would actually detonate its fuel in a special chamber at the rear of the aircraft and then ride the shockwave up to a theoretical top speed of Mach 10. It was mechanically simple, with these engines that could operate up to an altitude of 30 to 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface and would only require a mix of liquid methane and liquid oxygen. The engines would be slung under the wings in two box-like nacelles about 40 feet in length with vast air intakes at the front in order to get enough oxygen. After all, at the height that this aircraft was operating at, air would be in short supply and would need to be big enough to fit even a VW Beetle. A pair of retractable canards were located just aft of the third crew member, which could be deployed during slow flight conditions, such as takeoff and landing, to give it much more control, and then fully retract at speeds exceeding Mach 3 to reduce air resistance. The aircraft would also have secondary twin high bypass turbojets that would operate at these slower speeds, but the plane would also require a very long runway for takeoff. One such runway that happened to be built at Groom Lake, aka Area 51, around the same time that this project was in operation. Coincidence? Well, we'll get into that later. The SR-75 would also have a tricycle landing gear configuration with 2 wheels on the nose and 4 on each main wing. And for all those material science geeks out there, you'll be happy to know that the penetrator consisted of composite titanium like the Blackbird that had come before. Lastly, this aircraft had the same suite of sensors as the SR-71, including a sensitive gamma radiation sensor for detecting hidden nuclear weapons. But it's the parasitic subcraft where it gets a little bit more interesting.
Problem solved, sir. Intelligence down. Ship is on fire. Torpedoes, get ahead. Torpedoes to start.
Enemy battleship destroyed.
EVE Online is a vast universe, alive with the unrelenting activity and combined history of its players.
The smaller parasitic aircraft, dubbed the SR-74, or otherwise known as the XR-7 Thunder Dart, would sit on top of the mothership during takeoff and launch mid-flight to perform its mission. At 90 feet in length with twin vertical stabilizers, it would have a crew of 2 and have a fantastic near-orbit capability. Yes, that's right, this bad boy can be launched from a mothership at around 100,000 feet and deploy materials up to 800,000 feet, or 151 miles above the Earth's surface. And trust me, there is nothing that could shoot down this aircraft at that point, let alone having to worry about entering other countries' borders. And this was all thanks to its 2 scramjet engines. They were supersonic ramjets that would burn a liquid methane with a boron-based additive, giving it a range of around 250 nautical miles at Mach 15. Yes, I didn't make a mistake, that's Mach 15. Because the scramjets already require air to be flowing constantly through them to power up, the jet would not be capable of launching itself. It would have to be flown up to that height and at that speed by the mothership. The Parasite would also have a small liquid hydrogen rocket on board to place 2 1,000-pound classified NSA military satellites into orbit when needed. Although you can totally imagine that these could be swapped out with 1,000-pound unstoppable guided bombs of the radioactive variety. But that wouldn't be its main mission, as the aircraft would also carry multi-spectrum sensors such as optical, radar and infrared. capable of mapping a target area down to an accuracy of 1 inch to 30,000 miles, which is just plainly ridiculous. The combination of all of this was the ultimate spy aircraft that could be deployed for any mission to get any intelligence anywhere in the world. Once the little bird had sent its goods to near-Earth orbit, and I know you're laughing when I say near-Earth at 151 miles up, the jet would then return back to Earth and land at a typical airport like one in the middle of the desert. I also want to specify that multiple sources are saying either the small craft went into orbit or just the rocket on board, and I actually believe the latter, as during the design process, the US military still had access to the shuttle. It actually resembles the Convair Kingfish and Superfish, and very likely the project was directly inspired or utilized learnings from this predecessor. Both aircraft were parasitic aircraft that were supposed to be launched for missions by a mothership and were quite capable of going the speeds required. Now, you might be scratching your head at this point and asking, Nick, just how realistic is this project that no one has even heard of? Now, this project is highly speculative, but based off the myriad of rumors and the sources that I've collected, it does start to paint a bigger picture that makes a lot of sense. Starting in the mid-1980s, the US Air Force and NASA endorsed several studies focusing on aircraft aligning with the descriptions of the Aurora Reconnaissance Aircraft project. This project was intended to succeed the SR-71 Blackbird, which was slated for retirement in the distant year of 1999. Whilst it had been revealed by various sources that Lockheed's secretive Skunk Works was developing the SR-75 Predator for the US Air Force, the initial discussions of the term Aurora occurred way back in 1985 in the US budget. This term apparently, according to the source of the video, was only for the prototype aircraft leading up to the SR-75. A small sum of $455 million was allocated for the aircraft construction by the fiscal year 1987, with the rest coming from black hole projects in the US budget. Previously, with the Challenger disaster in 1986 and access to space reduced, the military realized this project was needed more than ever, and thus the prototypes prioritized to be able to launch those essential spy satellites. Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine were the first to report on this revelation, with the design and construction being awarded to Lockheed's famous Skunk Works, their Advanced Development Projects division, with Rockwell retaining the structural subcontractor job thanks to both his works on the SR-71 and the North American Aviation XB-70, respectively. Groom Lake was then selected as its testing location, obviously, and suitable hangars and runways were built. The latter remarkably long for only, it seems, a heavy and powerful aircraft design. Coincidence? So what happened next? Well, apparently the SR-75 went fully operational in